Veteran and his dog were in Times Square on New Year's. They uncovered a secret in an old building. You're about to discover an incredible story that unfolded in the heart of New York City, a tale of courage, loyalty, and unexpected revelations that changed countless lives forever. Before we begin this emotional journey that will leave you breathless, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss our amazing stories. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when a veteran service dog leads him into an abandoned building on the busiest night of the year. Now let's dive into this remarkable New Year's Eve adventure that proves sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can trigger the biggest changes. The December cold bit through Marcus Thompson's worn army jacket as he navigated the churning sea of humanity flooding Times Square. Even after 3 years back from Afghanistan, the press of crowds still made his shoulders tense, his breathing shallow. The sounds of celebration, laughter, shouting, music blaring from speakers merged into a cacophony that reminded him too much of chaos he'd rather forget. But Duke, his German Shepherd service dog, pressed reassuringly against his leg, a steady anchor in the chaos. The dog's vest, clearly marked Service Animal Do Not Pet, created a small buffer zone around them as tourists instinctively gave them space. Marcus hadn't planned to be here tonight. New Year's Eve in Times Square was the last place a veteran with PTSD wanted to be, but his sister Sarah had begged him to come. "You can't spend another New Year alone in that apartment," she'd said over the phone that morning, her voice carrying that particular mix of concern and frustration he'd heard too often since coming home. "Mom would have wanted you to try." The mention of their mother, gone 2 years now from cancer that took her too fast, had broken through his defenses. She'd waited for him to come home from his last deployment, held on just long enough to see him one more time. The least he could do was try to honor her memory by rejoining the living. So here he was, surrounded by thousands of celebrating strangers, trying to pretend the fireworks wouldn't send him spiraling back to Kandahar. He'd already mapped out 3 escape routes, identified the nearest subway entrances, and calculated how long it would take to get back to his apartment in Queens if things went south. The weight of his emergency medication in his pocket was both reassuring and a reminder of how far he still had to go in his recovery. Duke's ears perked up suddenly, his attention fixed on something beyond the barriers. The dog's entire body went rigid, not with aggression, but with the intense focus Marcus had seen countless times in Afghanistan when Duke had detected IEDs or hidden threats. Marcus followed his gaze to an old building wedged between 2 gleaming hotels, its darkened windows and crumbling brick facade a stark contrast to the neon brilliance surrounding it. The Breslin Building, according to the faded lettering above its boarded entrance. Strange that such prime real estate would sit abandoned, especially in the heart of Manhattan, where every square foot was worth a fortune. "What is it, boy?" Marcus murmured, but Duke was already pulling toward the building, his nose working overtime. In 3 years together, Duke had never steered him wrong. The dog had an uncanny ability to sense danger, distress, or something simply out of place. In Afghanistan, Duke had saved his unit multiple times, detecting explosives that their equipment had missed. Since coming home, the dog had learned to detect Marcus's panic attacks before they fully manifested, had woken him from nightmares that left him screaming, had been the one constant in a world that felt increasingly alien. Marcus glanced at his watch. 10:47 p.m. Sarah wouldn't expect him at their meeting spot near the MTV studios for another hour. She was there with her husband Tom and their 2 kids, probably buying overpriced hot chocolate and taking selfies with the costumed characters that roamed the square. Part of him envied their simple joy, their ability to exist in crowds without calculating threats. They slipped through the crowd, Duke leading with purpose. People parted unconsciously, some pointing at the service dog, others quickly looking away when they noticed Marcus's 1,000-yard stare. He'd gotten used to being a curiosity, the damaged veteran with his loyal dog, a walking reminder of wars most people preferred to forget. As they approached the building, Marcus noticed something odd. One of the boards covering a ground-floor window had been pried loose, hanging at an angle that created a gap just large enough for someone to squeeze through. Fresh scratches in the wood suggested recent activity, and the nails that had held it in place were bent, not rusted through. Someone had forced this open recently, maybe even tonight. Duke whined softly, pawing at the ground beneath the window. Marcus knelt beside him, his trained eye catching what Duke's nose had already detected: drops of blood on the concrete, still wet despite the freezing temperature. They led directly to the window gap. His mind automatically catalogued the pattern: not arterial spray, but steady drops. Someone was hurt but mobile. "Someone's hurt," Marcus whispered, his military instincts kicking in. The part of his brain that had been a combat medic came alive, pushing aside the anxiety and doubt. He pulled out his phone, considering calling 911, but hesitated. If someone was injured and hiding in there, they might have good reason to avoid the authorities. His own experiences had taught him that sometimes the system failed those who needed help most. How many veterans had he known who'd avoided the VA, avoided the police, avoided anyone in authority because trust was a luxury they could no longer afford? Duke made the decision for him, squeezing through the gap before Marcus could stop him. "Duke, heal." But the dog ignored the command, disappearing into the darkness. For Duke to ignore a direct command meant something serious. The dog's training was impeccable, but there were times when his instincts overrode everything else. Cursing under his breath, Marcus had no choice but to follow. He squeezed through the gap, his broad shoulders barely fitting. The wood scraped against his jacket, and for a moment, the confined space triggered a flash of memory. A collapsed building in Helmand Province, searching for survivors while insurgents closed in. He pushed through the panic, focusing on Duke, on the present, on the mission at hand. The interior smelled of decay and neglect, with an underlying scent of human habitation that suggested the building wasn't as abandoned as it appeared. Dust particles danced in the thin beams of streetlight, filtering through cracks in the boarded windows. Marcus pulled out his phone's flashlight, sweeping it across the space. They were in what had once been a grand lobby, its marble floors cracked and covered in debris. The ornate ceiling moldings draped in cobwebs like forgotten decorations. But there were signs of recent activity, footprints in the dust, some fresh, some older. A shopping cart in the corner filled with blankets and canned goods. Graffiti on the walls, some of it artistic, some of it clearly marking territory. This wasn't just an abandoned building. It was a refuge for the invisible people of New York, those who fell through society's cracks. Duke's bark echoed from somewhere above, urgent but not aggressive. Marcus found the stairwell, its Art Deco railings still intact despite decades of abandonment, the brass tarnished but solid. He climbed carefully, testing each step, his footsteps echoing in the empty space. The sound reminded him uncomfortably of clearing buildings in Afghanistan, never knowing what waited around the next corner. On the third floor, he found his dog standing guard outside a door marked Suite 3B. Duke's tail was rigid, his ears forward, every muscle tense with purpose. The door was ajar, hanging off one hinge as if it had been forced open repeatedly over the years. Marcus pushed it open slowly, his body automatically falling into a tactical stance he hadn't used since Afghanistan. Weapon hand-free, though he had no weapon, support hand ready, knees slightly bent, ready to move in any direction. The beam of his flashlight revealed a makeshift living space that spoke of long-term habitation, sleeping bags arranged on camping mats, battery-powered lanterns placed strategically around the room, stacks of canned food organized by type, water bottles lined up against one wall. Someone had tried to make this place a home, and in the corner, a figure huddled against the wall, arm pressed against their side, blood seeping between their fingers. The metallic scent of blood was stronger here, mixing with the musty smell of the abandoned building and the sharp scent of fear sweat. It was a girl, maybe 17 or 18, with tangled dark hair and frightened eyes that held a wariness beyond her years. She flinched when the light hit her face, trying to press herself further into the corner, her free hand reaching for something, a piece of rebar, Marcus noted, that she'd been using as a weapon. "It's okay," Marcus said softly, raising his free hand in a peaceful gesture, making himself smaller by crouching slightly. "I'm not here to hurt you. My dog led me here. You're injured. Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse with pain and fear. "Please don't call the police. They can't find me here." Duke approached slowly, tail wagging gently, his demeanor shifting from alert to comforting. The dog had always been able to sense when someone needed comfort versus security. He lay down a few feet from the girl, belly to the ground, making himself as non-threatening as possible, while still maintaining a protective position between her and the door. Marcus moved closer, noting how the girl's eyes tracked his every movement, how her grip on the rebar never loosened. "Let me look at that wound first, then we'll talk about what happens next. I was a medic in the army. I can help." "How do I know you're telling the truth?" she asked. And Marcus heard the voice of someone who'd been betrayed before, someone who'd learned that trust was dangerous. Marcus slowly pulled out his wallet, showing her his VA card, his old military ID he still carried. "Staff Sergeant Marcus Thompson, 68W, combat medic, served in Afghanistan from 2018 to 2021. I've patched up worse than whatever you've got there, I promise." She hesitated, studying his face in the dim light. Whatever she saw there made her slowly move her hand. The gash along her ribs was deep but clean, likely from glass or metal, about 4 inches long and still bleeding steadily. Marcus had seen worse, much worse, but it needed attention. Without proper care, infection was almost guaranteed in conditions like these. He shrugged off his backpack, pulling out the first aid kit he always carried, a habit from his service days that his therapist said was part of his hyper-vigilance. Right now he was grateful for it. The kit was more extensive than most civilian versions: quick clot gauze, Israeli bandages, antibiotic ointment, even suture supplies, though he wouldn't attempt that here. "What's your name?" he asked as he worked, cleaning the wound with practiced efficiency. His hands were steady, falling back into the familiar rhythm of emergency medicine. "Lily," she said through gritted teeth as the antiseptic stung. "Lily Chen. I'm Marcus. This is Duke. Want to tell me what happened?" Lily's story came out in fragments as he bandaged her wound, her voice growing stronger as she realized he was truly there to help. She'd been living here for 2 months with her younger brother Tommy, age 14. Their parents had died in a car accident 6 months ago, a drunk driver on the FDR Drive, gone in an instant. With no other family in the country, they'd been placed in separate foster homes. "They promised we could stay together," she said bitterly. "The social worker said it would just be temporary, just until they found a placement that could take both of us. But weeks turned into months. Tommy called me crying every night about the abuse he was suffering. His foster father—" She paused, her jaw clenching. "Mr. Garrison was a monster. He hit Tommy, locked him in a closet for hours, barely fed him. And there were other things Tommy could barely tell me about. When he showed up to our supervised visit with bruises and the social worker did nothing, said Tommy was just having adjustment issues, I knew the system wasn't going to save us." Marcus felt his jaw clench. He'd seen too many vulnerable kids exploited in war zones. The thought of it happening here in his own city, in a system supposedly designed to protect children, made his blood boil. Duke seemed to sense his anger, pressing against his leg with a soft whine. "So you ran," Marcus said, not a question but understanding. Lily nodded. "I turned 18 last month. I could leave my placement legally, but Tommy, taking him was kidnapping in the eyes of the law. But I couldn't leave him there. I couldn't." Tears ran down her face now, mixing with the dirt and exhaustion etched into her features. "The Breslin building has been abandoned for years," she continued. "Some homeless folks told us about it. There are a few of us living here, people who've fallen through the cracks. We look out for each other, share food, keep quiet. There's an older couple on the 2nd floor, Vietnam vet and his wife, 3 kids who aged out of foster care on the 4th floor, a woman fleeing domestic violence on the 5th. We're like our own little community of the forgotten. It was working until tonight." "What happened tonight?" "Tommy's foster father, Mr. Garrison. Somehow he tracked us here. Maybe someone saw us and reported it for the reward money. There's $1,000 for information leading to Tommy's return. He came with 2 other men about an hour ago. Tommy and I ran, but I caught my side on some broken glass climbing through a window. I made Tommy keep going, told him to blend into the Times Square crowd and meet me back here after midnight. But Garrison, he's still looking. I could hear him on the 2nd floor when you came in." Marcus felt his tactical mind kick into gear, assessing threats and resources. 3 hostile individuals in the building, an injured girl, a scared boy somewhere in Times Square, and who knew how many other vulnerable people hiding in this building. "Why is he so determined to find Tommy?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "The foster care checks are part of it. $800 a month per kid. But it's more than that. Tommy overheard things, saw things. Garrison is involved in something bigger, something with other kids in the system. Tommy has proof on his phone, photos and recordings he managed to get. That's why we couldn't go to the police. Garrison has connections, friends in the system. They just send Tommy back to him and make me disappear. Probably claim I kidnapped him and lock me up." A crash echoed from somewhere below, followed by angry voices. Duke's hackles raised, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Marcus moved to the window, peering through a crack in the boards. 3 men were entering through the same gap he'd used, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Even from here, he could see one of them was carrying a gun. "That's them," Lily whispered, trying to stand despite her injury. "I have to warn Tommy. Keep him away." "You're not going anywhere with that wound," Marcus said firmly. "Duke, guard." The dog immediately positioned himself in front of Lily, alert and ready. Marcus pulled out his phone, but instead of calling 911, he scrolled to a different contact. Rodriguez, a detective he'd met at the VA who specialized in crimes against children. Rodriguez was one of the good ones, someone who'd bucked the system more than once to protect kids. "Rod, it's Marcus Thompson. I need you at the Breslin building on 44th Street now. Bring backup you trust completely. We've got a situation with foster kids and corrupt officials. And Rod, come quiet. No sirens, no marked cars. There are other vulnerable people in this building who'll scatter if they think it's a raid." He ended the call and turned back to Lily. "I've got a friend who can help, someone outside the normal channels, but first, we need to keep you safe and find Tommy." The voices were getting closer, heavy footsteps on the stairs. Marcus assessed their options. 3 against 1 with an injured girl to protect. In Afghanistan, he would have had his squad, his weapons, the rules of engagement clear. Here, he had Duke and his wits. But he also had something else, the element of surprise. These men didn't know he was here. "There's another stairway," Lily said urgently. "Fire escape on the north side, but it's partially collapsed between the 2nd and 1st floor. The older couple, Mr. and Mrs. Nguyen, they use ropes to get up and down." Marcus made a quick decision. "We're not running. Running makes you pray. Duke, stay and protect." He looked at Lily. "No matter what you hear, you stay here with Duke. He won't let anyone near you." Before she could protest, Marcus slipped out of the room, moving with the silent precision that had kept him alive through 3 tours. The hallway was dark, but darkness had been his friend in Afghanistan. He knew how to use it, how to become one with shadows. The men were on the 2nd floor now, their voices carrying clearly in the empty building. "Check every room," one voice commanded, gravelly with authority. "The boy has to be here somewhere. The girl, too, from the blood trail." "Mr. Garrison, maybe we should just cut our losses," another voice said nervously, younger, uncertain. "Times Square is crawling with cops tonight. If someone reports—" "Shut up," Garrison snapped. "That boy has enough evidence to put us all away. We find him, we find the phone, and we clean up this mess. You knew what you were signing up for when you joined this operation." "I thought we were just skimming foster checks," the nervous voice continued. Not what you've been doing to those kids. You're in too deep to grow a conscience now, Peters. Keep searching." Marcus positioned himself in the shadows at the top of the stairs. As the first man rounded the landing, Marcus struck, using a chokehold to render him unconscious silently. The man was heavy, out of shape, probably Peters, the nervous one. Marcus lowered him quietly to the floor, zip-tying his hands with restraints from his backpack. The man's flashlight clattered down the stairs, the sound echoing through the building. "Jerry?" Garrison called. "Jerry, what was that?" Marcus grabbed the unconscious man's flashlight, clicking it on and off in a pattern as if signaling all clear. It bought him precious seconds as the second man came up to investigate. This one was warier, weapon drawn. A pistol, Marcus noted with concern. But he was looking ahead, not up, where Marcus had positioned himself on the landing above. The tactical disadvantage didn't faze Marcus. As the man reached the top of the stairs, Marcus dropped from above, his full weight driving the man to the ground. They grappled briefly, the gun skittering across the floor into the darkness. Marcus's training took over, muscle memory from countless hours of combatives practice. Within seconds, the second man was unconscious, also zip-tied. That left Garrison, and from the sound of retreating footsteps, he was running. Marcus pursued, catching him on the first floor as he tried to squeeze back through the window. Marcus hauled him back inside, slamming him against the wall, hard enough to knock the wind out of him. "You're going to tell the police everything," Marcus growled, his face inches from Garrison's. "Every kid you've hurt, everyone who's involved." Garrison laughed bitterly, even as he gasped for air. "You have no idea how deep this goes. You think you're some kind of hero? They'll bury you. Cops, judges, social workers, we own half the system. You're just one broken veteran with PTSD playing vigilante. Who's going to believe you? The words hit too close to home, but Marcus didn't let it show. Maybe they won't believe me, but they'll believe the evidence and they'll believe the kids when they testify. Those kids are nothing, Garrison spat. Throwaways. Nobody cares about foster kids. That's why the system works for people like me. The casual cruelty of the words made Marcus's hands clench into fists, but before he could respond, the sound of sirens approaching cut through the night. Rodriguez had come through. Marcus zip-tied Garrison's hands, then dragged him to the lobby to wait. Back on the third floor, he found Duke still standing guard, Lily clutching the dog's fur like a lifeline. "It's over," Marcus said gently. "The police are here, good ones. Tommy, we'll find him. Duke's the best tracker I know." Rodriguez arrived with a small team of officers Marcus recognized from various veteran support events. Men and women he knew to be trustworthy. As they took Garrison and his accomplices into custody, Marcus explained the situation, showing Rodriguez the photos he'd taken of Lily's injury and the living conditions in the building. "We need to find the boy before midnight," Rodriguez said, checking his watch. 11:30 now. Half of New York is in Times Square. And Marcus, there are other kids. Garrison was running a whole ring. We've been trying to crack it for months, but nobody would talk. This could be the break we needed. Duke was already at work, nose to the ground where Tommy's scent would be strongest. Lily had given him one of Tommy's shirts from the sleeping bags. The dog led them out of the building and into the crowd, Marcus and Rodriguez following, while other officers took Lily to get proper medical attention and secured the scene. The Times Square crowd had grown even denser, the energy building toward midnight like electricity in the air. Duke wove between legs, following an invisible trail only he could detect, his service vest parting the sea of people. They passed the glowing advertisements, the stages where performers entertained the crowd, the barriers where police kept order. Marcus felt his anxiety rising with each passing minute. So many people, so many potential threats, so much noise and chaos. But then Duke stopped at a small gap between two buildings, barely an alley, where heating vents from the surrounding buildings created a pocket of warmth. There, crouched behind a dumpster, was a small figure, thin Asian features similar to Lily's, clutching a battered phone like his life depended on it. "Tommy?" Marcus called softly. "I'm a friend. Lily sent me." The boy's head shot up, eyes wide with fear. "Lily, is she okay? Mr. Garrison..." "Garrison's in custody. Lily's safe, getting medical attention. You're safe now." Tommy broke down then, the tears of a child who'd been trying to be strong for too long. Duke approached him slowly, tail wagging gently. Tommy buried his face in the dog's fur, sobbing. Marcus and Rodriguez exchanged glances, both thinking of all the children who weren't as lucky as Tommy and Lily, who didn't have someone to find them. The countdown had begun in Times Square. 10 minutes to midnight. As Marcus helped Tommy to his feet, the boy handed him the phone with shaking hands. "Everything's on here," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Photos, recordings, even emails I screenshot. It's not just Garrison. There's a whole network, placing kids with abusers for money. They call it the pipeline. Some of the kids, some of them just disappear." Rodriguez took the phone carefully, his face grave as he scrolled through some of the evidence. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. This is huge. Tommy, you're a brave kid, you and your sister both." They made their way back through the crowd, Duke leading, his presence calming Tommy's nerves. At the police station, a special unit was already assembling to review the evidence. Lily was there, bandaged but smiling through tears when she saw her brother. She tried to run to him but winced from her injury. The reunion was tearful, both siblings clinging to each other as if they'd never let go. Marcus stood back, Duke at his side, watching as Rodriguez coordinated with Child Services to ensure the Chen siblings would be placed together in a safe emergency foster home that very night. 5 minutes to midnight, someone called out, and they could hear the crowd in Times Square even from inside the station. Sarah called Marcus's phone. "Where are you? It's almost midnight. The kids are asking for Uncle Marcus." "I got held up," Marcus said, "but I'm exactly where I need to be." "Marcus, you promised..." "Sarah, I'll explain everything tomorrow. Trust me, this is important." As the final minute of the year ticked down, Marcus found himself in the station's break room with the Chen siblings, Rodriguez, and a handful of other officers. Someone had turned on the TV to watch the ball drop. Duke lay at Tommy's feet, the boy's hand resting on the dog's head, like he was afraid to let go. 10, 9, 8, the crowd chanted on TV. Thank you, Lily said to Marcus, her voice thick with emotion. You didn't have to help us, you didn't even know us. 7, 6, 5. Duke knew you needed help, Marcus replied. That was enough for me. 4, 3, 2. Tommy looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much for 14. Are you really a veteran? 1. The room erupted in cheers from the TV as fireworks exploded over Times Square. But in their small space, it was quiet, contemplative. For the first time in 3 years, the sound of fireworks didn't send Marcus into a panic. He was too focused on these kids who needed him to fall apart. Yes, Marcus said. 3 tours in Afghanistan. Is that where you learned to fight those men? That's where I learned that standing by when someone needs help isn't an option. Sarah texted him. Happy New Year, wherever you are. Love you. Marcus typed back, Happy New Year, making Mom proud tonight. If you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Remember to hit that notification bell so you can follow what happens next in this incredible tale of courage and justice. This story is just beginning, and you won't want to miss how one night in Times Square changed dozens of lives forever. The first week of January brought a whirlwind of legal proceedings that shocked even veteran investigators. The evidence on Tommy's phone proved even more damaging than anticipated. What had started as one corrupt foster father revealed itself as an organized ring involving 7 placement officers, 4 foster families, and a network that spanned 3 states. The FBI got involved, the case exploding beyond what anyone had imagined. The photos Tommy had risked everything to take showed not just abuse but documentation of transactions, children being moved between homes not based on their needs, but on which foster parents paid the highest bribes. There were audio recordings of Garrison discussing prices, talking about kids like they were commodities. Most disturbing were the references to children who had aged out of usefulness, children who had simply vanished from the system. Marcus found himself drawn into the investigation, his military background and clearance level making him a valuable consultant. But more than that, he couldn't abandon the Chen siblings now. He attended every court hearing, Duke always at his side, providing the steady presence the traumatized siblings needed. During one particularly difficult session, where Tommy had to identify other children in the ring from photographs, the boy broke down completely. It was Duke who brought him back, the dog instinctively moving to provide deep pressure therapy, a technique Marcus had seen him use with veterans at the VA. That's James, Tommy whispered, pointing to a photo. He was at Garrison's before me. He tried to run, but they caught him. I haven't seen him in 2 months. Rodriguez's team worked around the clock, using Tommy's evidence to track down the missing children. 3 were found in other states, having been trafficked through the foster system. 2 were found dead. 7 were still missing. The emergency foster placement for Lily and Tommy was meant to be temporary, just until the courts could figure out a permanent solution. They were placed with the Washingtons, an elderly couple who'd been fostering children for 30 years with an impeccable record. Marcus visited daily, Duke becoming Tommy's unofficial therapy dog. He doesn't have nightmares when Duke's there, Mrs. Washington told Marcus one evening, her voice soft with wonder. That dog of yours is special. In 30 years of fostering, I've never seen an animal connect with a traumatized child like that. It was true. Duke had taken to sleeping in Tommy's room, alert to every restless movement, every sign of distress. The boy who'd been too scared to sleep, who'd stayed awake in Garrison's house waiting for the next attack, was finally getting rest. But Lily was struggling in a different way. At 18, she was technically aged out of the foster system, only allowed to stay with Tommy through a special provision while the case was ongoing. She dropped out of high school to care for him, sacrificing her own future for her brother's safety. The weight of that sacrifice was crushing her. I was supposed to start college this year, she confided to Marcus one afternoon while Tommy was at school. They were sitting in the Washingtons' living room. Duke sprawled between them. I had a scholarship to City College for engineering. I was going to build things, create things. But after Mum and Dad died, she trailed off, staring at her hands. I used to dream about designing buildings. Now I just dream about keeping Tommy safe. You could still go, Marcus said. The scholarship might still be available. Who would look after Tommy? I'm all he has. No, Marcus corrected gently. Not anymore. The idea had been forming in his mind since New Year's Eve, growing stronger with each passing day. Marcus had been living alone since his discharge, rattling around in his mother's old house in Queens, the one she'd left him when she died. It was too big for one person, too quiet, too full of memories. 4 bedrooms, a yard where Duke could run, good schools nearby, more space than one veteran and his dog needed. He'd been thinking about his mother a lot lately, how she'd taken in foster kids herself when Marcus and Sarah were young, always making room at their table for one more child who needed love. Every child deserves a soft place to land, she used to say. Marcus had thought he'd lost his ability to provide that soft place in Afghanistan, thought the war had made him too broken to help anyone. But maybe that wasn't true. Maybe being broken just meant you understood other broken people better. "So you're talking about becoming a foster parent?" his therapist Dr. Patel asked during their session. "I know it sounds crazy. Actually, it doesn't. You've been looking for a mission since you came home, Marcus. Maybe this is it. Maybe saving these kids is how you save yourself." The process wasn't simple. Background checks, home inspections, interviews, training courses. Marcus threw himself into it with the same intensity he'd once applied to military operations. His service record worked in his favor, as did the glowing recommendations from Rodriguez and the team of social workers who'd seen him with the Chen siblings. During the home inspection, the social worker, a no-nonsense woman named Janet, grilled him about everything from his PTSD treatment to his financial situation to his philosophy on child rearing. "You've never had kids," she pointed out. "What makes you think you can handle 2 traumatized teenagers?" "I've never been a parent," Marcus agreed, "but I've been a leader. I've been responsible for young soldiers not much older than Tommy. I've seen trauma, lived with it, learned to cope with it. These kids don't need perfection. They need stability, understanding, and someone who won't give up on them." Janet made notes, her expression unreadable. "And your PTSD." "It's part of who I am," Marcus said honestly. "I'm in treatment. I take medication, I have coping strategies. Duke helps. But more importantly, I think my experience with trauma might actually help me understand what these kids are going through. I know what it's like to not trust your own mind, to be hypervigilant, to expect danger around every corner. I can help them through that because I'm going through it too." During this time, the case against Garrison and his network proceeded with shocking revelations. Tommy testified via closed-circuit television, too traumatized to face his abusers directly. Lily held his hand the entire time, Marcus and Duke waiting just outside. The boys' courage in speaking up led to 17 arrests and the rescue of 12 other children trapped in similar situations. One of the rescued children was a 10-year-old girl named Maria, who'd been in the pipeline for 2 years. She was placed with the Washingtons temporarily, and Marcus watched as Tommy took on a protective big brother role, sharing his coping strategies, introducing her to Duke. "You're going to be okay," Marcus overheard Tommy telling Maria one day. "It doesn't feel like it now, but you will be. And if you're scared, Duke will help. He knows when you need him." The media attention was overwhelming. "Hero, veteran, and service dog save foster children," the headlines read. "The Pipeline: How a Foster Care Ring Trafficked Children for Profit." Marcus hated the attention, but Rodriguez convinced him to do one interview, hoping it would encourage other children in danger to speak up. "Duke's the real hero," Marcus said on camera, the German shepherd sitting perfectly at attention beside him. "He knew something was wrong. All I did was follow his lead. But this isn't just about one dog or one veteran. This is about a system that failed these children and countless others. We need to do better." The interview went viral, leading to calls for foster care reform, increased oversight, better training for social workers. But it also brought threats. Members of the pipeline who hadn't been caught yet, people who stood to lose money and power if the system changed. Marcus's address was leaked online. He started receiving death threats, photos of the Chen siblings taken from a distance. "So we need to move you all to a safe house," Rodriguez said, after a particularly specific threat. But Tommy, brave Tommy, who'd already been through so much, stood firm. "No," he said, "we're not running anymore. We're not hiding. That's what they want, for us to be scared, to be quiet. But we're going to keep talking. Other kids need to know it's okay to speak up." Marcus had never been prouder of anyone in his life. February brought a breakthrough in the legal proceedings and an unexpected complication. The Chen siblings' caseworker, Mrs. Martinez, called Marcus with news. "There's a great-aunt in California who's been located. She's willing to take both children. Marcus's heart sank, though he kept his voice steady. That's good. Family is important. But when Mrs. Martinez visited the siblings with the news, their reaction was unexpected. Tommy burst into tears, clinging to Duke. Lily stood firm, her jaw set with determination that reminded Marcus of young soldiers facing impossible odds. "We don't know her," Lily said. "She never reached out after Mum and Dad died. We're finally safe here. Finally stable. Tommy's in school, he has friends, he has support. Why would you move us across the country to live with a stranger?" The great-aunt, it turned out, was in her 70s, living on a fixed income in a one-bedroom apartment. She'd offered out of obligation, not genuine desire. After a series of phone calls and evaluations, she withdrew her offer, admitting she wasn't equipped to handle two traumatized teenagers, which brought them back to square one, except Marcus's foster parent application had been approved. "It would just be temporary," Mrs. Martinez explained, "until Lily turns 19 and can petition for custody of Tommy herself. About 10 months. Marcus looked at the siblings, who were trying not to appear hopeful. Duke had positioned himself between them, tail wagging slightly, as if he knew something important was happening. "What if it wasn't temporary?" Marcus asked. The room fell silent. Tommy looked up, eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. "You mean? I've got a big house in Queens, good schools, a yard for Duke. Lily could finish high school and still start college in the fall. Tommy could have stability. I'm not trying to replace your parents, but maybe we could be a different kind of family." Lily's composure finally cracked. She threw her arms around Marcus, sobbing. Tommy joined them, and Duke, not to be left out, pushed his way into the group hug, tail wagging furiously. The transition wasn't seamless. There were fights, tears, moments when the trauma surfaced in unexpected ways. Tommy had panic attacks that reminded Marcus too much of his own. Lily struggled with trusting any adult completely, constantly waiting for Marcus to reveal some hidden agenda. Marcus's own PTSD was triggered by the responsibility, the fear of failing these kids who'd already been failed by so many. The first night in the Queen's house was rough. Tommy couldn't sleep in his new room, ending up on the floor of Marcus's room with Duke. Lily paced the house, checking locks, looking out windows. Marcus found her at 3 a.m. standing guard by Tommy's original room. "I keep thinking Garrison will find us," she admitted, "that this is all too good to be real." "I know the feeling," Marcus said. "After Afghanistan, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, kept thinking the safety wasn't real. But it is real, Lily. You're safe, Tommy's safe, and I'm not going anywhere." But there were good moments too, moments that made everything worth it. Tommy joining the robotics club at school, his face lighting up when their team won a competition. Lily getting accepted to City College with her scholarship reinstated, choosing to commute so she could stay close to Tommy. Family dinners where Duke would steal food and make them all laugh. Quiet evenings where they'd all pile on the couch, watching movies, feeling safe. Marcus learned to cook beyond military rations, though Lily often took over, teaching him her mother's Chinese recipes. The kitchen became the heart of their home, filled with the smells of star anise and ginger. The sound of laughter as Tommy tried to teach Marcus to use chopsticks properly. "Mum always said food is love," Lily explained one evening, showing Marcus how to fold dumplings. "When you feed someone, you're taking care of them in the most basic way." Dr. Patel called it mutual healing. The siblings gave Marcus purpose, a reason to keep fighting his own demons. He gave them stability, protection, and unconditional support. And Duke was the glue that held them all together, the one who'd brought them together in the first place. By March, the household had found its rhythm. Marcus would drive Tommy to school before heading to his new job consulting for a veterans advocacy group. The job had come through Rodriguez's connections, allowing Marcus to work with other veterans struggling with reintegration while maintaining a flexible schedule for the kids. Lily would take the subway to college, coming home to help Tommy with homework. Duke would patrol the house, keeping watch, always knowing who needed comfort and when. One evening as they sat down to dinner, a mix of Chinese dishes Lily had taught Marcus to make and American comfort food, Tommy asked a question that had been haunting him. "Do you think other kids are going through what we went through?" Marcus and Lily exchanged glances. "Probably," Marcus said honestly. "The system isn't perfect. The pipeline was just one organization. There are probably others. Can we help them, like you helped us?" It wasn't a question Marcus could answer easily, but it planted a seed. Over the following weeks, they began researching, connecting with advocacy groups, learning about the foster system's failures and the organizations working to fix them. Lily started a blog sharing their story with names changed for privacy, offering advice to other foster kids on how to seek help, how to document abuse, how to find safe adults to trust. The blog went viral, leading to speaking engagements at schools and community centers. One evening, Lily showed Marcus an email she'd received. "Your blog saved my life. I'm 15 and in my third foster home. I thought I was crazy, that no one would believe me about what was happening. But reading about Tommy's courage to document everything, to gather evidence, I did the same thing. My social worker finally listened. I'm safe now. Thank you." "We're making a difference," Lily said, tears in her eyes. Marcus, meanwhile, began training Duke for a new mission. The dog's natural ability to sense distress could be channeled into visiting foster homes, schools, and youth centers, providing comfort to traumatized children and possibly identifying those in danger. The training sessions took place at the local VA, where Marcus had connections with the therapy dog program. Duke took to it naturally, learning to respond to subtle cues that indicated a child in distress. But more than the formal training, Duke seemed to have an innate understanding of trauma, approaching each child with exactly what they needed: playful energy for those who needed distraction, calm presence for those who needed grounding. "It's like we're creating our own little army," Tommy said one day, watching Duke practice his new commands with Maria, who'd started visiting on weekends. "The best kind of army," Marcus agreed, "one that protects instead of attacks." April brought the final court proceedings in the case against Garrison's network. The convictions were unanimous, sentences ranging from 5 to 20 years. Tommy didn't have to testify again, but he wanted to attend the sentencing to see justice served. Standing in the courtroom, watching Garrison get led away in handcuffs, Tommy whispered to Marcus, "We won." "You won," Marcus corrected. "You and Lily. You were brave enough to speak up, to fight back." Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. This time, Marcus didn't shy away. With Lily and Tommy beside him, Duke at their feet, he spoke about the importance of believing children, of creating safe spaces for them to report abuse, of reforming a system that too often failed its most vulnerable. "Every child deserves what these two have shown," Marcus said: "courage, resilience, and the chance to heal. Our job as adults is to make sure they get that chance." But the victory was bittersweet. The investigation had revealed that at least 20 children had been trafficked through the pipeline over 5 years. 7 were still missing. Their faces haunted Marcus, appearing in his dreams alongside the faces of Afghan children he hadn't been able to save. One night, he woke from a particularly bad nightmare to find Tommy standing in his doorway, Duke beside him. "Bad dream?" Tommy asked. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. Tommy came in, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I get them too. Dreams where Garrison finds me, where I'm back in that house. But Dr. Kim says that's normal. She says our brains are trying to process the trauma." Dr. Kim was Tommy's therapist, a specialist in childhood trauma that Rodriguez had recommended. Both siblings were in therapy now, as was Marcus, the whole family working through their individual and collective trauma. "It's okay to not be okay," Tommy said, words Marcus had told him many times. "That's what family does, right? We take turns being strong." That moment crystallized something for Marcus. They weren't just playing at being a family anymore. They were one, forged not by blood but by choice, by showing up for each other day after day. May brought unexpected challenges. Lily graduated high school. She'd managed to complete her requirements through online courses and sheer determination. The graduation ceremony was small, just a handful of students who'd completed alternative programs. But Marcus and Tommy cheered like she was valedictorian at Harvard. But the joy was tempered by anxiety about college. Despite her acceptance and scholarship, Lily was terrified. "What if I can't do it?" she confided to Marcus the night before classes started. "What if I'm too damaged, too far behind?" "You survived things that would break most people," Marcus told her. "College is going to be challenging, but it's nothing compared to what you've already overcome. And you're not doing it alone. We're here." The first semester was rocky. Lily struggled with being in crowded lecture halls, with trusting study partners, with believing she deserved to be there. There were nights she came home in tears, ready to quit. But each time the family rallied. Tommy helped with her math homework, his natural aptitude for numbers surpassing even Lily's. Marcus provided steady encouragement and practical support. Duke seemed to know when she needed comfort, appearing at her side during late-night study sessions. By the end of the semester, Lily had a 3.7 GPA and had made her first real friend since her parents died, a girl named Samantha, who was also a first-generation college student. June brought an unexpected visitor. The Chen siblings' great-aunt from California, Mrs. Louise Chen, had flown in to meet them. Marcus was prepared for a custody battle, but Louise surprised him. "I came to see that they're all right," she said over tea in their living room, Duke lying peacefully at her feet. "I couldn't take them. I know my limitations, but I needed to know they were safe." She spent 3 days with them, sharing stories about the siblings' mother, her niece. She brought photo albums Tommy and Lily had never seen, filling in gaps in their family history. Marcus watched as the siblings absorbed these pieces of their past, seeing their parents as full people rather than just the absence they'd become. "Your mother was brilliant," Louise told Lily. "She was accepted to MIT, but chose City College to stay close to family. She said success meant nothing if you didn't have people to share it with. She would be proud," Louise told them before she left. "She always said the measure of a person wasn't where they came from, but what they did with where they were." She pulled Marcus aside at the airport. "Thank you," she said simply, "for being what I couldn't be, for giving them what they needed." "They saved me as much as I saved them," Marcus replied. Louise smiled. "That's how you know it's real family." Summer arrived with a heat wave that had the whole city sweltering. Marcus installed an above-ground pool in the backyard, where Duke would splash around, while Tommy and his new friends from the robotics club worked on projects in the shade. Lily got a part-time job at an engineering firm, an internship that could lead to full employment after graduation. The blog she'd started had evolved into a non-profit organization, Foster Kids United. With Marcus's help on the business side and Tommy's tech skills building the website, they created a platform for foster children to safely report abuse, connect with resources, and support each other. The platform included encrypted messaging, resources for documenting abuse, connections to trusted adults and organizations, and a panic button that would immediately alert authorities and advocates if a child was in immediate danger. Rodriguez, now promoted to captain, became their law enforcement liaison, ensuring that reports through the platform were taken seriously and investigated properly. The first month, they received 47 reports. By August, they'd helped remove 8 children from dangerous situations. "We're making a difference," Lily said one evening, reviewing the statistics. Real, measurable difference. But success brought scrutiny. Some accused them of encouraging false reports, of damaging the foster system's reputation. There were threats, anonymous emails warning them to stop. One particularly nasty editorial in a conservative blog called them attention-seeking troublemakers, destroying the sacred institution of foster care. Marcus increased security at the house, installed cameras, varied their routines. But he also refused to be intimidated. "Are you scared?" Tommy asked one night after a particularly nasty threat that had mentioned him by name. "Yes," Marcus admitted, "but fear isn't always bad. It keeps us careful. And we don't stop doing right because someone tries to scare us. That's a lesson I learned in Afghanistan. The mission matters more than the fear." Duke seemed to sense the increased tension, becoming more protective, especially of Tommy. The dog had always been attuned to Marcus's PTSD, but now he watched over the whole family with the dedication of a sentinel. September meant back to school for both siblings. Tommy entered high school, nervous but excited. He'd grown 3 inches over the summer, his voice starting to crack. Lily began her sophomore year of college more confident now, her grades improving steadily. Marcus watched them head off on the first day, Duke whining slightly at their departure. "I know, boy," Marcus said, scratching behind the dog's ears. "The house is too quiet without them." But quiet didn't last long. Foster Kids United was gaining national attention. They were invited to speak at conferences, to testify before congressional committees about foster care reform. Marcus found himself in a suit, more often than he'd ever been in uniform, advocating for better oversight, more resources, stricter vetting of foster parents. At one conference in Washington, they met Senator Patricia Williams, who had been pushing foster care reform for years without much success. "Your story is changing things," she told them. "People can ignore statistics, but they can't ignore faces, stories. Tommy, your courage in documenting the abuse, that's leading to new requirements for regular check-ins and documentation. Lily, your blog has reached thousands of kids who thought they were alone. She paused, looking at Marcus. And you've shown that veterans have so much to offer in civilian life. There's actually a program being developed to connect veterans with foster children, recognizing that shared experience with trauma can be a strength. October brought a call that changed everything. The President's office, inviting them to the White House for a ceremony honoring individuals making a difference in child welfare. Tommy was so excited he could barely speak. Lily cried. Marcus felt a mixture of pride and discomfort at the attention. They flew to Washington, D.C., Duke included with special permission as Marcus's service animal. Standing in the Rose Garden, listening to the President speak about their story, Marcus thought about that night in Times Square less than a year ago, how a single moment of choosing to help had led to this. The President spoke about courage, about ordinary citizens making extraordinary differences. But when she mentioned Duke, the entire crowd seemed to lean in. And we cannot forget Duke, the President said, the service dog whose instincts started this entire chain of events. Duke reminds us that sometimes heroism comes in unexpected forms, that compassion doesn't always speak in words. Duke, as if understanding, sat up straighter, his tail wagging slightly. The photo of him with the President would later become one of the most shared images from the ceremony. After the ceremony, a woman approached them. She introduced herself as Jennifer Walsh, a Hollywood producer. I want to tell your story, she said. Not a documentary, but a feature film. Something that could reach millions, shine a light on these issues. Tommy's eyes went wide. A movie? About us? The proceeds would go to Foster Kids United, Jennifer continued. You'd have creative control, ensure the story is told right. They agreed to think about it, to discuss as a family. On the flight home, Tommy couldn't stop talking about which actors should play them. Lily was more cautious, worried about their privacy, about reliving the trauma. Marcus just wanted whatever was best for them. That evening, they held a family meeting, Duke included. He had a vote too, Marcus joked, though the dog's opinion was usually pretty clear. I think we should do it, Tommy said, but only if we can make sure it helps other kids. Lily nodded slowly. We could use the platform to reach kids who don't have internet access, who can't find our blog, and the money could help expand Foster Kids United. Marcus looked at both of them, these remarkable young people who'd been through hell and come out determined to help others. Then we do it, but we do it our way. In the end, they agreed, but with conditions. Names would be changed, certain details altered for privacy. They would consult on the script, ensure it didn't sensationalize their pain, but focused on the hope, the healing, the possibility of change. November arrived with its promise of Thanksgiving, their first as an official family. The adoption papers had gone through in October. Lily had aged out of the system, but chose to have Marcus adopt her anyway, making it official. Tommy's adoption was finalized the same day. They were legally what they'd already become in every way that mattered. Family. The adoption ceremony was small but meaningful. Sarah came with her family, crying through the entire proceeding. Rodriguez was there, along with the Washingtons and several other families they'd helped through Foster Kids United. Even Louise Chen flew in from California. Do you, Marcus Thompson, promise to provide a safe, loving and permanent home for Thomas and Lily Chen? The judge asked. I do, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. And do you, Thomas and Lily, accept this adoption? Yes, they said in unison. Duke barked once, making everyone laugh. I think that's unanimous, the judge said, smiling. Congratulations to the Thompson family. Later, at the celebration dinner, Tommy stood up to make a toast. To Duke, he said, raising his glass of sparkling cider, who knew we all needed each other before we knew it ourselves. To Duke, everyone echoed. Thanksgiving was a full house. Sarah and her family, Rodriguez and his wife, the Washingtons, 3 families from Foster Kids United who had nowhere else to go. The table Marcus's mother had hosted so many foster children at over the years was full again, continuing her legacy in ways Marcus had never imagined. What are we thankful for? Marcus asked as they sat around the table. The turkey Duke had been eyeing all day finally carved. Duke, Tommy said immediately, feeding the dog a piece under the table despite Marcus's mock glare. Each other, Lily added. Second chances, Marcus said, and the courage to take them. "Foster Kids United saving my daughter," said one of the visiting parents. "New beginnings," added Mrs. Washington. As they went around the table, each person sharing their gratitude, Marcus felt his mother's presence. She would have loved this, would have loved seeing her home full of people who'd found each other in the darkness. December approached with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The anniversary of their meeting loomed, bringing with it complex emotions. The film producers wanted them to return to Times Square for New Year's Eve, to recreate the moment for the movie. Marcus initially refused. The idea of turning their trauma into entertainment bothered him. But Tommy had a different perspective. What if another kid sees it? What if they're hiding in a building somewhere, scared and alone, and they see that it's possible to get help? Isn't that worth it? So they agreed, with conditions. It wouldn't be a recreation but a commemoration. They would go to Times Square not as victims but as survivors, advocates, a family. December 30th, they stood in the renovated Breslin building. It had been purchased by a developer who, after learning its story, decided to turn it into affordable housing for aged-out foster youth. Lily had been asked to cut the ribbon at the opening. The developer, Michael Chen, no relation, had been moved by their story. "I came to this country as a refugee," he said. "I know what it's like to need a safe place. This building will be that for kids who have nowhere else to go." The renovation was remarkable. What had been a crumbling ruin was now bright, safe, hopeful. Each unit was small but complete, designed for young adults transitioning out of foster care. There were communal spaces for support groups, a computer lab for job searching and education, a kitchen where residents could cook together. "10 months ago I was hiding here, injured and terrified," Lily said to the gathered crowd. "Today I'm standing here with my family, knowing that this building will be a place of hope instead of desperation. That's the power of people choosing to help." Duke barked as if in agreement, making everyone laugh. They toured the building, Tommy pointing out where they'd hidden, where Marcus had found them. On the 3rd floor, Suite 3B had been turned into a memorial space, with photos and stories of children who'd been failed by the system, including the 7 still missing from the pipeline. "We won't forget them," Marcus said quietly, reading the names. The next night, New Year's Eve, they returned to Times Square. The crowds were just as dense, the lights just as bright, but everything else had changed. Marcus stood with his family, his children really, though he'd never pressure them to call him Dad. Some of the other Foster Kids United families had joined them, a small group of survivors and advocates in the sea of revelers. Rodriguez was there with his family. The Washingtons had come, despite their age and the cold. Even Louise Chen had flown in from California, wanting to be part of this moment. The film crew was there too, but unobtrusive, capturing the reality rather than staging anything. Jennifer Walsh had kept her promise about authenticity. As midnight approached, Marcus thought about his mother, how proud she would be. His therapist had been right. He'd needed a mission, a purpose beyond himself. He'd found it in the most unexpected way. But more than that, he'd found healing. Not the kind that erased trauma, but the kind that transformed it into something useful. His PTSD hadn't disappeared, but it had become something he could manage, something that helped him understand and help others with trauma. 10 seconds, Tommy counted down, his phone recording everything for their blog. Duke barked at the fireworks, but it was excitement now, not distress. Marcus didn't flinch at the sound. The loud noises that had once sent him into flashbacks were just celebration now. Lily held both their hands, tears streaming down her face. 3, 2, 1, the ball dropped. Confetti fell like snow. Around them, couples kissed, friends hugged, strangers wished each other Happy New Year. But in their small circle, there was something deeper than celebration. There was triumph, healing, hope. "Happy New Year," Marcus said, pulling both kids into a hug. "Happy New Year, Dad," Tommy said, the word coming naturally now. Marcus's breath caught. He looked at Lily, who smiled and nodded. "Yeah," she said softly. "Happy New Year, Dad." Duke barked again, pawing at them for attention, making them laugh through their tears. Around them, Times Square celebrated the promise of new beginnings. But for Marcus Thompson, Lily and Tommy Chen, and one very special German shepherd named Duke, the new beginning had already come. It had arrived on a cold night the year before, in a moment of choosing compassion over comfort, action over apathy. The film would eventually be made, winning several awards and raising millions for Foster Kids United. The organization would grow, helping hundreds of children escape abuse and find safe homes. Marcus would testify before Congress, contributing to legislation that reformed foster care oversight. Lily would graduate with honors, becoming an engineer who designed safe housing for at-risk youth. Tommy would get a full scholarship to MIT, his experience driving him to develop technology that helped traumatized children communicate their needs. But all of that was in the future. In that moment, as one year became the next, they were simply a family standing together in the place where it all began. Proof that sometimes the most extraordinary stories start with the simplest act of kindness, following a dog who sensed someone needed help. Duke had been a service dog, trained to help Marcus with his PTSD, but he'd become so much more, a bridge between broken souls, a guardian angel in fur, the thread that wove together a family from the fragments of loss and trauma. If this incredible story has touched your heart, please share it with others who need to hear it. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and remember, sometimes heroes have 4 legs and fur. Every child deserves a chance at safety and love, and sometimes it takes a village or a very special dog to make that happen. Thank you for joining us on this remarkable journey of hope, healing, and the power of choosing compassion. Until next time, remember that every act of kindness, no matter how small, can change someone's world forever.